Let me tell you a true story on a property we sold in Anaheim Hills. It was a probate property. The family thought they had cleared everything out. They donated, they hauled, they were literally done. My team did one final sweep, and we found a suitcase hidden away in a closet. This suitcase was old, and inside was all the jewelry wrapped in pantyhose. Yes, real jewelry, valuable jewelry hidden in pantyhose. Here's the scary part. The difference between finding that suitcase and never knowing it existed often comes down to one thing: the experts you choose. Attorney Russell Noel said it best after we found it. He said, "Paula, if it wasn't for you, this would have been lost." And that's why what you do in the first 72 hours matters so much. Hi, I'm Paula Aragone with Aragone and Associates. And after more than 23 years doing this work, I can tell you one thing with certainty: strategy is what we do. If you're inheriting a house and don't know where to start, you're not alone. This is week 4 of my probate series, and today we're covering 2 things that can cost families thousands of dollars: the hidden treasure inside the home and the hoarder house reality. Stay to the end and I'll show you how to download my free first 72 hours checklist. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. So let's get into it. If you Google what to do when inheriting property, you'll get 1,000 different answers. But here's the truth: you don't start with sorting. No, you start with securing. Because once grief meets chaos, things disappear. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes with good intentions. Either way, it does create damage. Here's our simple order of operations that we do. Secure. Document what's inside the house. Inventory what's inside the house. Plan. Then sell. So let's talk about the first 72 hours. First, control access. That's the first thing we always say. Before anyone starts grabbing sentimental items, you need to establish control. Because once the home becomes an open door, it becomes an untraceable problem. Second, secure entry points, locks, windows so that people cannot break in, side gates, especially if you have a pool, garage access. Sometimes you need to unplug that cord, especially if the property is vacant. You do not want squatters or people breaking in. Third, document before anything moves. Do a walkthrough video, photograph every room, look into closets, drawers, garage. You might find things that are there that need to be inventoried. Look into sheds, attic access. There's things that we normally find in those places. Third, protect the estate, and it protects the family. By protecting the estate, you are protecting the family. Fourth, separate valuables and sensitive documents. Jewelry, coin collections, stamp collections, cash, guns. Find tax returns, bank statements, insurance paperwork, trust and will documents, checkbooks, key safe and safe codes. Secure them properly. You need to make sure you find a place to collect all those items and you take them with you. This isn't about trusting your family. It's about protecting your family. Because once something goes missing, it's never just about the item. It becomes suspicion, lack of trust, accusation, conflict. So you want to ensure that those things are safe. One of the biggest mistakes I see in probate and trusted estate situations is letting families rummage before there's even an inventory system. That is something we say don't do. It might feel productive, it feels emotional for sure, it feels like closure, but it often leads to conflict. You don't want to do things that way. Dwight Brown from Home Helpers said something to me. He said, jewelry goes missing right after death. And here's what he meant. Sometimes can be the caregiver. Sometimes can be a family member. Sometimes it's a well-meaning friend. But once the home becomes an open door, small valuables disappear first. And I can tell you, that is absolutely true. Sometimes it's intentional, and sometimes it's good intentions that turn into big problems. Like, mom would want me to have this. How many times we hear that? Or the other one, I'm just keeping it safe. But later, when someone asks, where did it go? There is no inventory, there's no record, there's no clarity, and that is when grief turns into conflict. But either way, it does create a problem. So here's my role. Secure the property, always first and foremost. Then document what's there. Create that inventory. Then distribute. Once there's a system, everything becomes calmer, clearer, and fair. So now we have a secure property. Let's go back to the Anaheim Hills. The family moved really fast in that situation. They were grieving. They were exhausted. They assumed anything valuable would be obvious, and they worked through those. But hidden values is rarely sitting on a kitchen counter. My team did that final sweep, not because we're dramatic, but because we're systematic. We check places people skip. We check closets, like in this case. We check top shelves. We check back corners. We check attics, linen cabinets, old luggage, like in this case. And that's when we found it, in the suitcase, place most people would have never found or looked into. That suitcase had a lot of pieces that the family would have lost. And that is this point that I'm trying to make. The difference between finding that jewelry or never knowing that it existed is often the experts you choose. Your team determines the outcome. The team that you hire determines your outcome. If you're inheriting a home and you don't know where to start, here are the most common places we find hidden value. These are the treasure hunt hotspots: old luggage and garment bags, shoe boxes and hidden closet corners, purses and coat pockets, kitchen tins and drawers, toolboxes, the garage, the attic bins, and behind framed artwork. This isn't to turn grief into a scavenger hunt. It's actually the opposite. It's to protect the estate and to prevent later conflict. one of the things I always say, inside of books, you can find a lot of money. Now, let's talk a little bit about the hoarder house, because this is where families are blindsided. Dwight Brown shares something I've seen again and again. Families often don't know mom was a hoarder because she was ashamed. She'd meet them at restaurants, she'd never invite them to come over. She controlled the image. Hoarding isn't laziness, it's often anxiety, trauma, and shame. And when the family finally enters the home after a loss, they don't inherit just real estate. They inherit a situation, often overwhelming situation. If you discover hoarding, here's what I recommend. First, don't go alone. Use PPE, gloves, mask, closed-toe shoes. Watch for pests, mold, and structural hazards, and call professionals early because the wrong step can create health risk and expensive delays. Now, let's talk a little bit about something that quietly drains estates. Families sometimes think everything is valuable, so they actually delay selling the property, sometimes for months, sometimes for a year or more. They don't have time to go through it. They have all the intention, they are emotional, they're overwhelmed for sure. So, one of the things we say is they assume that there's a lot of value in all of these. Emotional value is real, but emotional value is not the same as market value. Here's a real case. An heir told me, Paula, I can't list the home until I go through everything myself. A month became 3 months. 3 months became 6, and the house stayed off the market for over a year. Yes, for over a year. When he finally finished his scavenger hunt, the big find was $5,000 in change, in pockets, books, you name it. Now, $5,000 is not nothing, but there's what most people don't calculate: the cost of holding an inherited property. Those are real costs. You have property taxes, you have insurance, often higher if the home is vacant. Sometimes insurance companies don't know that it's vacant. Utilities, maintenance, HOA if there's one, and the risk of damage. We're talking vandalism, we're talking leaks, mold, pest. Now we can even have a mortgage. So we have mortgage cost on top of all of that, plus the emotional cost. Beneficiaries get frustrated. Siblings start blaming each other, and delays create conflict. So here's the framework we use to move forward without rushing grief.